Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. So in this video I wanted to share with you my new Arcade1up build that I've made in the last couple of days. And the reason why, because I'm just a big fan of arcade machine, but also modifying, because you can do so much more than we're having with an original cabinet. Or if you want to build yourself a new project, yeah man, there are so many ways to go to. And I think this is just the ultimate way to experience some retro arcade games, but in combination with some modern emulation. So therefore I wanted to make this video. It's by the way not a tutorial, it's more like an inspiration video. But I already have a Pandora box and also a Pi Arcade1up building video. So if you want to have some more information, you can always leave it in the comments or check those videos. So I always wanted to build myself an Arcade1up machine or an arcade machine with a PC inside in combination with Lunchbox. Because I have so many cool games beside the retro games that I wanted to play on this machine. I just wanted to have one standalone device, and thanks to Lunchbox you can bring all your games on one place and just easily use it with this navigation menu. But okay, so let's talk about the other ways you can modify your arcade cabinet, because those are way cheaper and way more convenient. Because it was a big hassle getting this PC to work in my machine and also configure everything that it finally works, because I needed to tackle a lot of problems. But don't get me wrong, because the Pandora box is just a great and easy way if you want to upgrade your arcade machine in general. It's plug and play. Basically the only thing that you need is the cable 3 and of course a Pandora's box. There are some limitations, better said there are a lot of limitations to this machine in combination with the Pandora's box. Not only that we can play only retro games. If you're getting yourself a really old box, then you're only limited to Neo Geo MAME, and the later on version is going to get support for PlayStation 1 and even up to Sega Dreamcast. But the limitations are going to get really noticeable with these Pandora boxes here and there, because the emulation is pretty choppy, screen tearing, and the later boards have support for Dreamcast, but the emulation is pretty choppy. So if you want to do some modifications and don't have a lot of knowledge about these things and just want to have something that is super easy going, the Pandora box is still one of my favorite main boards to go to, and you can play a lot of great games and you can just easily install it in your arcade machine. An Arcade1up or an arcade machine, it's both possible. Take consideration with the Pandora box in combination with a CRT old school, it's going to be a little bit tricky. But that is something for a different story. And if you're up for the challenge and you want to have a little bit more hassle, then a Raspberry Pi 4 is a great way to go to. The Raspberry Pi 4 nowadays is super powerful and can play even more than the latest Pandora's boxes, and is superior in many different ways. Not to forget, of course, you can always pick up an older Raspberry Pi for cheap, like a Raspberry Pi 3B or a 3B Plus. But again, you need to do some software modifications and you need to have some knowledge about the Raspberry Pi to setting it up. But in the end, you have so much more freedom when it comes to Raspberry Pi, modifying, and what I really need to point out, compared with the Pandora's box, you're going to need an encoder board for getting the controls to work with your arcade machine in this case. But again, I did see a lot of people were building arcade machines with a Raspberry Pi 4, and I completely understand of the options, and it is not, let's say, more expensive than a Pandora's box. So we're having all those different themes that you can use for your arcade machine. And not to forget, what I do like about this is that we're having so many old school systems that you don't see with a Pandora's box or Pandora Game 3D. And not to forget, the support of controllers like a trackball is possible with the Raspberry Pi. And with a Pandora box it's going to be a hassle and you're very limited what you can do with it. So therefore the Raspberry Pi has a lot of big advantages over the Pandora's box. But if you want to go all the way, let's talk about that. So in my previous video we have spoken about this test bench. There was an i7 3 series version, it's quite old CPU, still a very powerful one in combination with the NVIDIA GTX 560 Ti. And the reason I wanted to build this thing in my machine is very simple. We're having now so many options and we don't have the limitations when it comes to the power. Even nowadays that the Raspberry Pi 4 is quite powerful, it can compete with a gaming PC. I could, let's say, slap an AMD Ryzen in it or a very expensive other machine, but I just want to build this thing from scratch. I just want to have more like old school parts that didn't cost me a lot of money. And yeah, what's the fun of slapping a couple of €1,000 inside a machine like that? It's just fun to get myself some old school parts. Let's see how far we can push it and what can we do with this machine now. Here a quick overview of the parts that I will use in this build when it comes to the PC specifications. So the first thing that you need to do, doesn't even matter what kind of upgrade you're going to do. We're going to need to remove the mainboard that includes also the games, and we're going to replace this with the PCB. That makes it possible to input a different signal like DVI, VGA and HDMI. And that's the first thing that we need to do. So the next thing that we need to do is removing all of the buttons, the original encoder boards. So you need to tear down everything. I did own the first release Arcade1up version here in the Netherlands, and I can tell you this thing was freaking horrible when it comes to the quality of joysticks, so you need to replace them whatsoever. So take consideration that you need to buy yourself a kit and some joysticks. I recommend get yourself some real parts, otherwise you don't have a great experience when it comes to playing some old school games. Okay, the next thing I needed to check out were the encoder boards. That was always more like a very big hassle, and man oh man, it was an adventure, and I will tell you why. So when you're going to get yourself a Pi, it's super easy to do. Get yourself a zero delay, cheap encoder board, and most of the time they will work just fine. But when I booted up my PC, we had this problem that a lot of Windows games didn't recognize my control input. So the Brook Universal Fighting Board is a great board or an encoder board for in your fight stick. But for an arcade machine, it's way too much of an overkill. So the next thing that I needed to do, my buddy RetroElf mentioned that we need to get an Xbox 360 encoder board from this brand. And the reason why, because this board is very well supported by a lot of Windows games. It makes sense, because a lot of games are supported by an Xbox 360 controller or an Xbox One controller. This needs to be the perfect fit for me, because I wanted to use this for emulation, but also want to play Windows games, and I want to play all of my games. So that's what we're going to use in this PC gaming build. But I did spend an extra couple of euros because I got the deluxe edition. If you want to do an upgrade in the future with your control panel, you have a lot of new options out there. It also includes turbo function like all the other ones, but still more inputs if you want to upgrade it. So I chose this deluxe version, the 2802 model. Okay guys, so here we're having the wicked cable spaghetti, and it's even getting worse simply because I added a special cable 3 for the light of future. I'm going to grab myself the 5V from the boards. See, with these boards we're having 4 slots that we can use for 5V, so I picked it up from there and I made a cable 3, basically 3 groups, so I can give my buttons the light of future that you're having. But for the light of future, we're having different ways, different encoder boards, especially when you're having a RetroPie. You're going to get a Haki set I've reviewed in a video. Then we're going to get an all-in-one package where you basically can plug and play your light of future. But within Pandora box, I also have a 5V output, because some of these Pandora boxes have a light up feature of their own, and I'm talking about the arcade stick itself with an LED strip in it. Or you're just going to get yourself non-light up buttons, of course, that is also possible. So with my Raspberry Pi build, I used a Chinese amplifier in combination with some GVC 300 watt speakers. But this is just a great option. I really like these Chinese amplifiers, they're freaking cheap. But I was thinking, hey, how can we do this differently? So with the first build, I did it like this. But I wanted to do something different, so I grabbed myself a Logitech subwoofer. Because it's just a super easy way to do. The Logitech subwoofers are just amazing. Enclosed subwoofer with amplifier, and we can just basically solder the 2 speakers, or the GVC in this case, on the amplifier of the Logitech. But I can tell you that when having a subwoofer of Logitech in your arcade machine, oh man, it's a completely different experience compared with a Chinese amplifier. Okay, so what I did, basically we have connected both the speakers to my amplifier from the Logitech, so we can navigate the volume over here and putting it on and off. I'm just going to leave it 90% and on all the time. We're having an extra volume control knob over here for the bass itself. I'm going to leave it on 10%, otherwise I will go crazy because this thing is very loud. So I added 2 of these GVC speakers. You can use all kinds of speakers you want. That's something you need to decide for yourself. But of course, take in consideration that we're using an amplifier of this Logitech kit. Normally we're having a couple of watts of speakers attached to it. So the 300 watts GVC is just already an overkill. So if you want to have more power, you need to have let's say a separate amplifier, or you need to get a better kit from Logitech or another brand. But I'm just going to leave it like this. Here, a quick side by side, the left one is the one with the subwoofer and the right one with a normal amplifier. Having less bass. So this is more like something you need to consider for yourself. If you want to have mid and high and you want to just have, let's say, a better sound than the original speaker, the GVC with a little amplifier is a very nice option. But if you want to have the bass, maybe the little trick I did with the, let's say, plug and play Logitech speaker kit can be something very fun and very cheap to do. Okay, so enough tinkering and chit-chatting about the Pi and the Pandora box and audio and encoder board. Let's start with the real work. Let's slap a gaming PC inside my arcade machine. So I grabbed this old i7 that I already shown you before. I did a full emulation video regarding this, what you can do with it, so check it out if you're interested. Just going to assemble it in my gaming PC like this. And a reason why I just want to have this mainboard inside my PC in combination with the graphic cards, of course. I can also get myself more like a complete PC inside this, but I have limited room and I was thinking, hey, let's do something wicked. Let's grab a mainboard and just screw it on the side plate of the arcade machine and let's side in a GTX gaming card. I'm also going to use a 600 watt power supply for this build. I don't need anything more than that, simply because I'm going to use one graphic card. But okay guys, so the product is finished this way. Here we're having the conversion board that I've shown you before. Here on the left we're having an SSD and a 2.5-inch hard disk for the extra storage capacity. Then we're having the main board here at the left side. I also assembled a new power supply and also a new CPU fan, simply because I needed to do some improvements. Over here it's a little bit of cable spaghetti, but that's what you're going to get with so many different parts, of course. This time I did use, by the way, a Be Quiet power supply, 600 watts. It's quiet and it's cool and enough watts. The build of this cabinet is finally done after a couple of days of work. As you can see on the front, we're also having some extra buttons, and I will explain you later on in this video why this is. I'm very pleased to see, and it was a lot of work, but I can say the end result is pretty damn awesome. If I need to do some maintenance or I need to do something with the USB connections, I need to do a little bit of disassembly. Very easy, remove the 4 screws and we can lift open the panel. I'm gonna give you a quick look how I connected all the buttons. So over here you can see everything has been mapped exactly how I want it to be. There's a little bit of cable spaghetti. I removed the panel for you guys, so you can see here at the bottom we can even reach the HDMI port for the VGA card. So everything is connected and ready to go. And if you want to have a replacement for something, you shall need to open up the back, of course. And here we're having the 2 speakers. But after 2 days of work, this is not a finished project. So like the cable spaghetti you're showing here, I will find a way to make it even nicer in the future. The final result of the light up button is just amazing. I'm using this Haki set. The joysticks are Senwa. That's more like my personal preference. I like the Senwa joysticks, they're very responsive. And I'm just a big fan of it. Okay, as you can see, that the buttons have a very long travel, but they got a very nice touch. They feel cheap in my opinion compared with Senwa, but when you're playing it, you don't really notice it. So I'm very pleased with it. I'm still using this remote. I just need it simply because for some key features. Maybe in the future I will make some extra buttons in my cabinet with a new encoder board, so I don't need the controller anymore. But for now, I'm just going to use it like this. I still need to close the emulator, or if I'm having an error, I can just basically fix it very easily with the remote. With this new build, I added 5 additional buttons at the front. The middle one is for the mode button. The mode button is going to need to put the encoder board in different modes, otherwise a lot of Windows games will not recognize the encoder boards. And for each player we're having a turbo function. That's something I just wanted to add to this build. It's very convenient with shoot 'em ups. Alright, so let's power it on. The system will automatically boot up and let's go. So to make this build complete, I want to have a nice front end, and in the end I chose Lunchbox for this. In combination with Big Box mode, there's an extra mode that you're going to get when you're buying the full license. You're going to get this fancy hyperspin look-alike menu. Yeah, maybe RetroPie also have this. But it looks very nice and you can bring all your emulators together. I just need to point out, setting it up is really easy, but you need to know what you're doing. But when you're going to set this all up, you can see that we're having the Sega Genesis, PlayStation 2 emulation, GameCube. You can add it all with a PC, and this is what I like about PC adding to an arcade machine. You don't have the limitations with the hardware. It depends of course how much money you're going to push into this main board, but in the end, if you want to play some, like me, some Windows games, Cuphead, DuckTales, Street Race Remake, Street Race 4, you name it, you can all play it with your arcade machine now, and you don't have any limitations. But this is the game why I basically made this machine, Street Race Remake. Oh hell yeah. When you're ready, you're set it up, I automatically let it boot up in Big Box mode, so we're going to get a nice fancy menu. You can always go back to the editing mode or like the desktop mode if you need to do some changes, but we can change out so much stuff inside the software itself, and you're having this a really nice interface. It makes us feel like an awesome piece of hardware and software combination. And key features like the Pandora box also has like a search function, platform search, you name it, the Lunchbox option has it all too. Alright, so let's play some games and let's have some fun with this arcade machine and play all the awesome things that we can play with a Pi or a Pandora box. Okay guys, so I think it's safe to say that this thing is just an amazing retro gaming mean machine. Combined with this PC we can play so many games. There are no limitation. The only limitation that you're going to have is the PC that you're building for it. If you're going to slap an old Dell dual core in it, you can play a lot of high-end stuff. But that's something you need to decide for yourself. I just want to make more like this low budget setup. I still had this old school mainboard laying around, combined with a lot of used parts and my Arcade1up, I made, in my opinion, something pretty cool. Let me know in the comments what do you think of this, what do you think of a PC inside a machine in combination with Lunchbox. Would you consider buying and building something yourself like this? I want to thank you for watching, consider subscribing, hit the bell, become one of the Wicked family, and I will see you in the next video.